We're about to get into a conversation concerning purpose. Finding and living your purpose is the question. Do you feel like you found it? Is what I want to start by asking you. Do you feel like you know what your purpose is here on this earth? You don't have to tell me what your purpose is, but I'd love to know if you have figured it out. And if so, how did you do that? Find us on WhatsApp, +27 6340 69126. Today, we are joined by a woman whose presence radiates power, purpose, and healing. A celebrated author, a sought-after TV personality, and an award-winning life and personal development coach, she is a beacon of transformation for women and youth across South Africa and beyond. Born in the vibrant heart of Soweto, Johannesburg, her journey has been nothing short of phenomenal. Through her dynamic shops, soul-nourishing retreats, and life-changing youth excursions, she has become a trusted guide for many navigating the path of purpose, of healing, and of self-discovery. She is the founder of the Empowering Women Arise with Power seminars and the driving force behind the initiatives that reconnect our youth with the richness of African history and heritage. Her work doesn't just inspire, it restores, it uplifts, it transforms. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a true champion of purpose and healing, the 2022 Mail & Guardian Woman of Power Leader Award winner in the Healing Women category. This is Nthabiseng Montsho. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Welcome to Heartlines, Nthabiseng.
Greetings, Sheila, and thank you so much for having me.
Nthabiseng, what does living a life aligned with purpose mean to you personally?
For me, living a life aligned with purpose, meaning waking up in the morning knowing that there is a life that you need to change. I mean, I remember recently I had an interaction with Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, and she said to me, Ntabi, don't be too hard on yourself. If you can go to bed at night and before you sleep and you ask yourself, did I do enough today? And you feel that you didn't do enough, know that there is tomorrow. And tomorrow you can do better than yesterday. So for me, it's being able to live a life which is in line with what God has called me for, and being able to know that this is what I'm called for, and being conscious and very much aware of that.
Nthabiseng, I want to talk about the God factor, right? Because this is truly not everybody's belief system. It's not everybody who's aligned to the realities of a deity of kinds. And so how do you reckon that they find purpose? And I'm saying this because you don't only extend your knowledge to yourself, you spread it out. You know, you foster and help people foster relationships with the path they ought to take. How does one have that conversation if God is not involved?
Look, a God factor may not necessarily resonate to the next person as a God factor. And I know this throughout the experience in my life as a mentor, as a mediator, as a life coach, as an author, as an international figure as well, that to somebody else, they may see the God factor in them as their ancestors. To others, it is the source. To others, it is the universe. So there is no prescribed name for the higher divinity that one would actually accustom themselves to. And also, it is not for us to actually judge, to say this is what is prescribed and this is what should be followed. Because God can resonate as nature to another person, and the God factor can resonate to another person as the higher force, however they want to call him or her. But the most important thing is to understand that when you go out into the world to speak, to touch, to heal through your gifts and through your purpose, through your talks, it is that which is actually underneath. What we see externally that needs the actual healing depending on how you are led. So there isn't really much of a prescribed deity as to that 100% prescription to say this is what I ascribe to, so the next person should but it is about the diversity and the openness of understanding that to me, it may be God, to another person, it can be Umbelingan, to another person, it can be Allah, and to another person, it can be that which they prefer to call him or her.
Nthabiseng, let's talk about fundamental days, right? You growing up in vibrant Soweto. For somebody who's tuned in from Banjul, and it says, I don't know what Soweto is like. I've never been. I've heard so many songs about the place. If it's not WizKid, it's another person from another part of the continent singing about this beautiful place called Soweto. Walk us through the vibrant cities, your most, I suppose, highlighted experience growing up in Soweto, Johannesburg.
I grew up in Midlands, Zone 10. It is at in Johannesburg, in a township. We also call it Ndofaya. So Soweto is very big, with thousands, more than 11,000 households in the Midlands area alone. And I grew up back in the day, as I remember, we used to play in the streets. We used to play hopscotch in the streets. It was a vibrant area. I remember it was during those times of the welcome Dover stoves, those coal stoves, that as you are playing late in the afternoon, there would be that big truck selling coal moving from street to street. And whenever that coal truck would come in, would go as children to run after it. And it was just the fun of that space. But more than anything, it is a space where people know people. It is a space where you know that, if there is anything that is happening in your life, whether it should be a celebration of sort or if you are grieving, you have a community, a warm community who will come and embrace you during those happy times or those dark times. But more than anything, Soweto is that space, that area which holds a very significant history in the history of South Africa, where, we know about the 1976 student uprising and a whole lot of other leaders like Nelson Mandela, our Nobel Peace Prize winners, the former President Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Tutu, and the figures such as Mama Madikizela Mandela, and a whole lot of public figures, including celebrities, our singers, our artists, our performers. Largely, we know that a whole lot of them, it was known and it is still known that we have beautiful talent and the beauty of the history that we hold at Soweto. So it was a very beautiful space to be in, especially because some of us and many of other children during that time were raised by grandmothers because our mothers had to go and work and you had to be remaining behind. It was a space where in the evening we would be staying together as family members, as cousins, as uncles, as aunts in one space, and there would be stories and jokes and conversations that would be shared. So it was a warm environment, truly, that I grew up in. So, and I know that whenever I travel, I would be asked, so where are you from in Johannesburg? Are you from Soweto? Because that's the first question that comes because of the history that the space holds. So, yeah, Soweto is that space where we have a whole lot, the good and the bad, the ugly of the former apartheid regime, where we would sometimes be ambushed by the hippos, the police, their big brown trucks, and they'd be throwing tear gas on the streets, and as young children would run when we see a police van. But also the shift and the transformation of what we see Soweto to be right now, and what it could actually also potentially become in the AI 4IR times. But it is a warm and a happy place to be in.
And Nthabiseng, what's really interesting is that you made mention of the attacks, right? Of course, this in the context of the era that was at the time. However, I do feel like in this present day and age, we have a different kind of attack. And what I've noticed is that back then, the opposition would bring us into a space of unity, whereas now we are easily scattered. No longer in support of each other. individualism has been promoted. What's your take on the contrast of the times we find ourselves in?
It's quite interesting. I think there's quite a number of factors which contribute to that. I mean, we can talk about psychosocial factors, we can talk about economical factors, we can look at, the challenges of poverty, where it is not like before, as I mentioned earlier, where you would have cousins staying under the same household. And now it's about the survival of the fittest, which is the reality that truly we are faced with, whereby people would rather, try and make ends meet for their immediate families. I don't truly and fully subscribe to that sort of setup of individualism, because that is where, as you know, right now with the issues of mental health and depression and all of that, these are the things that, we did not see creeping in as we were coming into the space of individualism and trying to be in our own spaces and corners. But I can tell you right now, as a person who frequents Soweto, that there is still that culture, even though one would want to see it portrayed in a different way. I mean, back in the day, we used to have clubs, youth clubs, but now what we see is young people at the street corners smoking the dachas and the nyawupes and those substances, that are killing the nation. We look at a total shift. And truly, I must say that not that there wasn't that type of culture before, but right now, looking at how difficult things are, there is so much unemployment, and people don't really understand that there could be a shift and a change that would actually bring the communities back together like it was before. And truly, I concur with you when you say there is that individualism, and it's something that at this stage and at this juncture, we cannot really ignore or avoid at this stage, looking at the hard economic times that we find ourselves in.
The voice of celebrated author, sought-after TV personality, and award-winning life and personal development coach. She's a beacon of transformation for women and youth across South Africa and beyond. Her name is Nthabiseng Montsho, and she joins us this evening. And we're talking all things purpose and finding our way into the state of understanding why it is we exist. And Tabi, I think the big question, that why, has remained such a difficult one for people in this time. And I say this because, firstly, stimuli overload. Everything has an answer, okay? If it's not your cell phone, it is your parent. If it's not your parent, it is your best friend. If it is not your best friend, it is your colleague, your boss. Everything has an answer for your existence. It almost makes you want to shy away from the question you are asking yourself. You sitting down and having that moment with self becomes such a difficult and complex pursuit that you almost shy away from it, and you just adhere to what everyone and anyone says to you about how you are to move forward. How have you found working with the youth, particularly in this era, when it comes to finding purpose?
Now you're touching a subject that is very close to my heart. I did a lot of research. I looked at myself growing up. I mean, growing up in the 90s during the Gen Early era, finding ourselves at SABC, going for auditions, going to those talk shows. Going to those talk shows, there was some sort of a purpose. We used to have youth clubs where we used to go and learn arts and dance and sing and draw. And right now we have seen the reduction of those spaces. Now in 2019, in fact, back in 2016, I woke up in the middle of the night. It was around 1 a.m. And I was worried, having watched the news of the skyrocketing numbers of teenage pregnancies and how young girls, who would go to school from the time they enroll from grade 1 up until grade 12, and the number of the dropouts of the children or young people during those periods. And also looking at the use of substance and how it was actually becoming very, dominant in our townships and obvious. And people would be knowing that there's a drug mule or a drug kingpin somewhere there, and their house would be respected, and you can't enter that space. And I looked at the challenges that young people are faced with. Currently, I mean, I looked 1976. There was a purpose that was being fought for by the youth then. I look now, looking at poverty, looking at unemployment, looking at lack of knowledge, self-awareness, looking at a lot of challenges that young people are faced with. And I woke up and I remember hearing this voice saying that, you know what, these are the challenges that my children are faced with, but these are the possible solutions. And that is when I did my first audiobook called Inspiration for Youth. And I started that project. It was not easy. I was scared. I didn't know what I was doing. But all I knew is that even at that time, even in the corporate space as I was working, I would find myself trying to shift the campaigns that would actually now resonate with the youth. Whenever I would go to schools, I'd make sure that I let my superiors know that actually we can run this campaign, but that's where the magic is. From the time I was in the banking industry to the time I went to the telecoms industry as regional accounts manager to the time I became project manager. So I looked at that. But fast forward to 2019, COVID hit. And there's a lot of talks that are happening, and there's a lot of help that other adults are getting, but there's no attention to the young person. And I remember at the heart and the peak of COVID, and I said, you know what, I'm going to start a project called the City Life Skills through the help of the former ambassador to South Africa, Marisa Gerafs, from Netherlands, and who connected me to the likes of Mama Zanele Mbeki, to the likes of the MDs and the CEOs of your Heineken, your Volpec, your Shell, those big Netherlands companies. And I had a vision. I shared my vision with her. I said, I'm worried about the South African child. I did a presentation of young people injecting themselves, young girls falling pregnant, the numbers of young people who were committing suicide. And I started the Lesedi Life Skills program. I took 250 children and from different walks of life, brought them into a space where they could learn different skills, such as the healing, healing of the past pains, while finding purpose, the usage of their talents, self-mastery skills, teenage pregnancy, having conversations and about unity and sisterhood and brotherhood and protection of each other, creating safe spaces for them. And yeah, fast forward, I just recently also released a book because I can't touch everybody, but there is a book titled Young, Powerful and Fearless, A Guide to Life for African Youth, which I launched at the University of Johannesburg over a month ago. And this is the book I wish to continue to touch the life of the African child with. And it speaks to unemployment, it speaks to forgiveness, it speaks to failure, it speaks to rejection, it speaks to these topics that children do not have the guts to speak to with their parents. And has been regarded as the mental imprint, and that's exactly what I have done. And it also speaks to entrepreneurship, how young people can shift from wanting to be near, employees, but to create, multi-million-dollar industries and giving ideas thereof and where they can go to. So there's contacts that are there, and also about financial education and how they can be prepared at a young age to know that they can actually know how to take care of finances, start businesses, and know exactly where to go for support.
Nthabiseng, it's all good and well to have all this sets of information, what you can do, how you can tackle entrepreneurship. But I do feel like there is an intrinsic key that the African child hasn't turned yet. That one that says to you, I can, as opposed to there are too many issues. We are a poverty-stricken continent. This is wrong. That is wrong. What do you think the context for that key being turned is?
Whenever I go to schools, because there's a schools campaign which I've established, which I want to enroll nationally, it is to say, do not, and I say this to adults, do not underestimate our youth. This is the very same youth that in 1976 was able to turn the tables around and say no to apartheid and being taught in a language that they didn't understand. And to say right now, I mean, I've been going to colleges and to the schools, and I look at young people who just need guidance and to be nudged, into that direction to make them understand that, look, you too matter. You are black, you are powerful, and you belong. And, reviving that knowledge of the father of black consciousness, that you are black and you are beautiful and you should be proud. And how I also do this is also offering solutions in the book as well on how to deal with certain issues, how to deal with failure, how do you deal with rejection. If you're a girl and you found yourself having been impregnated and now you are a single parent, you have to take care of this child, you have to go to school. How do you redeem yourself? How do you redeem an African child and prepare them for leadership in terms of shifting their mindset and thinking on how it is that they can look not only for the now on what comes into the stomach, but to think for the future on what it is that they can contribute into the shift in the political space and into the AI space and every other space that which God has blessed them with. So it is all about solutions. And of course, we cannot present solutions without presenting the problem. So the problem statement should remain, but also it's also engaging them on also on how. How do you think we can tackle this challenge? And how do you see yourself tackling this challenge? It's also about preparing them for leadership, of course, because we are looking forward to be led by the young people, but somebody, parent figure, a person like myself, and somebody who's passionate about the youth and looking into the future for their own preparation as to how do we then prepare them and to become ethical leaders, to become leaders who will understand that life will present challenges and they will have mistakes, but how do they not dwell and camp there, but to move with that intention of learning from mistakes so that they can become better people.
The voice of award-winning author, TV personality, life and personal development coach, family mediator, and healing facilitator. That is Nthabiseng Montsho joining us this evening. Send through your questions. We're talking all things finding purpose, aligning to purpose. +27 6340 69126. For now, a quick breather. When we get back, Nthabiseng, I have some quick fire questions for you. Right? We're going to shake up the room a little bit. Okay, we're going to get to know Nthabiseng a little bit better outside this beautiful work that you are doing. We want to gauge you. Do you like tea? Do you like coffee? That up next. A minute after 11 p.m. Central African time, we're currently in conversation with none other than Nthabiseng Montsho, an award-winning author, TV personality, life and personal development coach, family mediator, and healing facilitator. Born in Soweto, she's passionate about empowering women and youth through purpose-driven coaching, healing retreats, and transformational workshops rooted in African heritage. And now we want to get to know Nthabiseng, or much related to as Nthabi, a bit more well. We want to get personal, if you'll allow us to, Nthabiseng. We want to get through some quick fire questions, and hopefully from that we can extract who it is you are. Are you ready for me?
I'm ready.
All right. Question number 1. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Mm-hmm. I can be both, but I am a night owl.
That's fair. Question number 2. One word your best friend would use to describe you.
They say I'm sweet. Sweet.
Okay. You're sweet. Okay. Question number 3. I refer to you as the sweet one.
Yeah.
Question number 3. Heels, sneakers, or barefoot in the grass?
Listen, sneakers, Ulster, any day. I'm a Sowetan through and through. Depending on the environment, I would rather be, say if I'm outside, yes, barefoot on the ground, but through and through, sneakers and Ulster, to be precise.
That is very specific. Why though? Was it the trend? Was it the setting? Was it the cool kid look at the time or of the time?
It's so funny because my mom used to tell me when I was young that, hey, my child, never ever date a guy who wears Ulsters. Those people don't wash those stockings, And growing up, And when you travel in different spaces, I love my traditional look, and it's very comfortable with the all stars. And I wanted to shift that narrative of all stars being worn by hooligans and tsotsies, to that it can be actually given that dignity, wearing Converse and still being able to climb the stages of the continent and even beyond. So, yeah, they're
Look at
comfortable.
Nthabiseng, I don't know about comfortability in those shoes, but to each their own, right? Question number 4, your favorite quote or mantra right now? Nthabiseng, are you with us?
Be still. Be still.
Is that it?
Be still.
Be still.
Be still. Just be still and listen to that inner voice. It's really wrong. That's where the answers come from. That's where a lot of solutions come from. So, in the stillness, that's what I resonate with, and that is my current mantra.
Question number 5, are we a coffee, tea, or good green juice person?
None of all of the above. I'm a water person.
Okay, now you have to explain for 12 and 16.3 marks. Why?
Look, every time I hold a glass of water, I always pray for water. Even when I ask my daughters to bring water, they know they always pray for it. There's something about water. There's something that is refreshing about water. There's something divine about water. There's something when you command and you speak into the water and you consume it, it does something. So I think it's more spiritual for me. But more than that, when I take a glass of water, I just keep saying, God, thank you for this. Thank you for water, because I feel it rejuvenates me and it brings me into that space of calmness and relaxation. So for me, it's really, really water.
You should have seen me grab my water right now and just look at it with all googly eyes. All of the googly eyes. As I'm like, yeah, can't wait for this conversation to end, because even me, I'm going to practice that. Let's get into question number 6. If you could teleport to anywhere in Africa right now, where would you go and why?
Burkina Faso at this stage. Looking at the shift, the leadership, the boldness, the consciousness, the reawakening, the reviving, the reconnection with the people, and that sort of reincarnation of Thomas Sankara to who we have right now in the African continent, somebody who is a true leader of Africa. That is where I would be. That is where I would have my hands dirty with the mamas and the young people of Burkina Faso, just to go and cultivate the space for the shift and them understanding the times we're in, the paradigm shift that is happening, and their understanding of the times and the shift that we are being led to in the African continent and in the realms of the spirit. So that's actually where I would rather be.
What would you say to the reality of the disbanding of the country's electoral commission? I know that was something that was considered a waste of money. We are talking leadership. We are talking a bold, brilliant, beautiful kind of leadership, but somewhat questioning that decision made by the current president. Your take?
I think we have to question those who are questioning who is pushing them to question. And we will know that in the history of Africa, whenever there's a leader like that who emerges, there's always going to be some sort of people that will be used. And I don't want to be controversial right now, but of certain forces that actually are being disturbed in their agenda to take over certain parts of our continent. So whenever there is something that is as great as that, there must be propaganda that comes with certain forces who want to take over and want to have their hands in the continent. So I would not really want to dwell much onto that because we kind of understand and know deeper conversations and things and forces that play on the background. So it's very important that we also become very, very conscious as to why is it all the time there is a leader emerging in Africa. Then there is that attention that needs to be put there, and there's going to be some sort of negativity that would be spoken on that particular leader. I kind of read things beyond what the eye can see, and I'm one of those human beings who cannot be easily convinced otherwise, because I know that people shape shift, and they change all the time because of certain news that they will see on the media or on social media, or somebody that would have said things that are not true, and that trends fast because remember, there's people who pay for these news to travel fast. So, yeah.
And on that very interesting note, what song describes that courageous, bold, self-led kind of character that you possess?
What comes to mind right now is Mama Miriam Makeba's song. Sure. There's a song by Mama Miriam Makeba saying, Balega Bunu, Sizongena, Sizobuya. That is the song that right now I would say there's plenty. I mean, I've got your Kajanin, I've got your Zewadi, Wikingi Munkle, but that still resonates with me. Balega Bunu, Sizongena Tina, we're still getting there.
Sure. What a beautiful number you chose there. And the very last question I suppose I have before we get back into just looking at some of the work that you put out. What's the one thing you believe that people don't know about you? They say you're sweet. We know you're bold, you're brave, you're resilient. You're about women. You're about the development of the continent as a whole. You feel strongly about us taking charge of what it is we own. However, what's that one thing that people are like, I didn't know that?
Sure. People don't know that I'm just a simple girl from Soweto, Netherlands, who dared to be unique and to be intentional about the decisions she made, from moving from toxic spaces, being a survivor of gender-based violence, finding myself becoming an inspiration to women, and being a mother, looking at where the country is and where our children are, and looking at everything else. I am very intentional and bold, but I'm very simple as well. When I get into spaces, people will bow, people will treat you differently. And those who really, really know me will tell you that she is such a simple woman. And that's exactly who I am. I can interact with that lady in the informal settlement where I can go in and sit with them, finding ladies drinking beer at the corner, and I join them and I talk to them because I need to understand what leads them into that space. I can sit and ask to buy a bunny chow, ikota, and sit with those Nyaope young people, both girls and boys, and just want to know what is it that led them to be in that space. So I get into spaces. I can get into a space intentionally so just to go and give hope to people and not to judge people by their circumstances.
The voice of Nthabiseng Montsho joining us this evening, an award-winning author, TV personality, life coach, personal development coach, family mediator, and healing facilitator. We're walking through the life and times of Nthabiseng, and obviously this to gauge how she founded her footing in purpose and sort of to learn how we can do it for ourselves, looking at of the work she has put out. You're more than welcome to send through your questions. Find us on +27 6340 9126. Tabi, as we were talking, my gauge is you are inspired by day-to-day experiences. right? You noticing the youth in the corner that perhaps had similar, if you will, tendencies and practices of back old, but now it being more aggressive. You know, you spoke about them smoking certain drugs in the corner. You spoke about having to sit down with people who are not the most favored in society and being able to spread hope. What would you say is your anchoring, if you will, that gives you continuous and consistent passion for this space, the space of uplifting, the space of giving hope, and the space of changing lives?
Besides growing up from an impoverished background, it is truly purely the love of people. I love people. I love elders. I love to sit with the elderly people. I would sit with those old men who drink traditional beer, and those old women. It's purely for the love of people, and also understanding in my background where I've been. I do not really believe in the notion that now that you've moved from Soweto and you said stay in a certain area, then it means you must forget where you come from. I'm that woman who will tell my daughters to say, ladies, can we pack sandwiches? We are going to this informal settlement day. We are going to partner with a certain institution. We will sit there and we will just speak and share, our experiences and allow people to share their experiences. And we have a conversation, we eat, and I go home. And this is just bringing hope. It's letting that child know that it doesn't matter whether you are, born of rape, or your parents were divorced, or you have no food to eat today. But you can become that which you have been blessed or destined to become. And they just need to hear that. It's understanding that the power of shift and transformation comes from hearing somebody else speak life into you.
Speaking about speaking life, I know that you do have excursions that you host that take a deep dive into African history. Now, I'm curious. Nthabiseng, I'm curious. I have all the questions in the world because I do feel like this is an area in which we as a continent need to upscale in terms of our storytelling, documentation, the realities of who we once were, the founders of technology, the founders of electricity, math, you name it. These are things that are within our genealogy. These are things within our bloodline. But I don't think we relate to them as much because there has been another narrative that's been sold. Talk to me about what you share when you host these excursions. What African history are we hopping into?
Sheila, this is one agenda that I'm very intentional about. We cannot cultivate the youth that do not know where they come from. And in them knowing how they need to move and lead moving forward, they need to understand where they come from, where their great-grandfathers, their ancestors come from. So I do excursions, and on those excursions, there's a particular place where I take the young people, where they get to learn the knowledge of pre-colonialism, how things happened, when colonialism was being introduced, and taking the teachings of the late Sanusi. And I can't say his late because I still believe on the spirit that is still much alive, about how, land was taken away from us. And also to instill to our children that they should not be ignorant because they need to lead from a space of consciousness and of awareness. So I also, part of the content speaks to how apartheid was introduced and the leaders which were taken away and the riots that came, when the leaders were being jailed in Robben Island. I talk about now the shift that came with the arts. But before that, we know about the killings that happened when the new South Africa came to power. And the shift really that came also with the leadership, but also things that we could have been, avoided, but also allowing the African child to understand that we were here because of bloodshed, people who fought, In 1976 and in every other area that is not really mentioned, where people contributed into where we are right now, to a space where you understand that not everything that is being sold to you, that is being brought to you, that you need to take at face value, to say it's okay to question and understand where certain things are coming from. So that is what I'm encouraging to the children. But also to say now where you are, what is it that is the struggle, or what is the need, or what have you identified as something that as a young person can take on and say, this resonates with me, and I can identify with this kind of struggle, but I'm also going to apply this particular solution and have those robust and raw conversations around where we come from, about slavery. I mean, when we went to Washington, D.C., to understand how it was with African people, where a black person would be deemed not to be feeling pain, where a woman would be cut open, a pregnant woman would be open, doing experiments with people and wanting to see if the child is a real human without any anesthesia, and having, the knowledge and understanding that black people were being used as targets to teach their children how to shoot. We can't forget that. We can't say children should forget that or not know about that. Then that information must be let out so that they will know that this is the strategy and how they're going to move forward when it comes to them leading. There is a child out there that God will reveal to them on how they can move forward based on the knowledge that they have learned in the past, in order for them to understand that as Africans, they also have what it takes to own those type 500 type companies, those billion African currencies. They can create their own one Africa currency, or even maybe be creative and innovative in whichever space where they will be led. It's not about me influencing, but it's letting them aware into this knowledge so that they will take better decisions moving forward, and understanding that we need leadership that is going to take into consideration that Africans still have a long way to go, but it will take those ones who are courageous enough to take on this space and lead with integrity and from a space of being informed.
Nthabiseng, I want to touch on just the reflection of history. You did make mention of some really painful spaces that the continent has found itself in due to the invasion, if you will, the colonization of the continent. I've found that conversations like that tend to leave us more drained, more hurt, more entitled to a change that we're not progressively tracking and working towards. Is that for you in the same experience, or are you seeing people become resilient because they understand that, listen, we've gone through some really tough times. However, we still are present today and we still can conquer?
Those conversations need not make us feel drained. These are the conversations that will enable us to make certain decisions based on the knowledge of knowing what was and what is and what can become. It is conversations that will enable young people to understand the power of us as African people, being the people who know how to forgive, people who are resilient, people who are powerful, people who are intelligent, people who are inventors, people who have known and lived in the space of artificial intelligence many centuries ago, and it being brought into the space, them knowing that it is them that started it. It is their great-grandmothers. I remember a lecture by Prof. Makwarela when he was speaking on OIR to say, I know the first innovator to be my grandmother, because when she did those pots, when she was a potter, she knew exactly which temperatures and at what sound a certain pot was ready to be painted, and a lot of other things, the creation of the light bulb, and a whole lot of divinity and the spiritual powers that as Africans we have, and being shifted from that to that we have to look out there, for a certain power to come and give us that that which we need, instead of looking from within. Seek ye the kingdom of God and all its righteousness, something that is within you, not out there where people get scammed through fake miracles, but something that is within, and the knowledge that is within. So it is not really for us to come and be angry. Yes, there will be an element of that, but it is about even shifting that anger. If you've learned martial arts, people, when they are angry, there's a space in which they shift that so that it becomes beneficial not only to them, but to families, communities, and the world at large.
Nthabiseng, an interesting mention that you are bringing forth is that of healing, right?
Yes.
And I think this is something, as the human race, we struggle with. We really struggle with the concept of healing. It's not a once-off, it's a process. And I don't know if it's the lack of resilience for the process, or perhaps it's just not understanding what the process entails. Perhaps walk us through the fundamentals of healing, and maybe give us a view of the process and what it might look like.
Sure. Everything in life and everything that is being brought to us, and every process and every challenge and pain we go through, that is meant for that particular individual, whether me, you, or any other person, has a lesson. But what we fail to understand as humans is that it is necessary sometimes to go through certain things so that we could learn the resilience and the power and the divinity about us and about the God in us. So when it comes to healing, people will tell you that you must heal and you must heal now. They don't want to talk about the process where you go through certain emotions, certain physical changes even, and certain spiritual and emotional changes that become part of you as you go through that pain. Now, people think that pain is meant to destroy them. And that is why people are so resistant when it comes to the healing. But you will understand that if you were to allow yourself in whatever mode of pain that you're going through and live in those emotions, whether it's tears, whether it's screaming, whether it's isolation, whether it's prayer, whether it's meditation, whatever that you will go through as you experience that, it all works together for your good. And once you understand that, you will actually know that as a person and as a human being, in order for you to go on to the next level or to even discover your God-given purpose, that purpose, that which is what is going to help the world, it is born out of pain that you would have experienced. And when people get to understand that, that is why they are able to move with power and authority when they face the world, because they've walked the journey. They understand the emotion. When I speak to a woman who is in a space of gender-based violence, I know because I have entered that space and I've gone through every coal and fire and water and dust and the beauty and the learning to dance and the coming out on the other side and emerge as a person that has been found fit to go and face the world to heal nations. So healing is not, or maybe going through the journey of healing, people should learn not to take things with the pinch of salt, or to look at themselves as victims, but as a space that is necessary for them to elevate to the next level, to even find their purpose, because most of the times it comes through that which they've conquered.
I love that. The idea of being a conqueror at inception. Because I took this journey, I have conquered. Not necessarily looking at what it is I've managed to achieve and do well, which is, I think, another plague on society, which is this idea of perfectionism. You know, I can get things really well to the extent that it's perfect. Perfect is subjective to the person who's consuming it, is the reality. And I absolutely love the way you phrased that, Nthabi. I want to talk about your legacy. When you look at your work and you're thinking some 20, 30 years stretch from now, when you turn back and you look, what would you like to see?
I will be seeing plethora and multitudes of people whom I've touched directly and indirectly, just by walking and choosing to walk in my purpose, just by choosing to become myself and go out to the world boldly and take that girl child and that boy child and say, my child, I'm here for you. You don't have to go through this journey alone. And through what I've chronicled on my books as well, Young, Powerful and Fearless and Women Arise with Power, I will be seeing multitudes of women in generations to come who will say, we knew that woman, she lived, and she was the person that has made me to shift, because I get those even now, but I will continue to see those people who say, I was on the verge of committing suicide, but because she said something, I decided to spare my life. I was on the verge of giving up in life, but because she did not give up, I will also not give up. I was on the verge of destroying that which I was blessed with because I felt it was not moving fast enough. But because she became patient, I will also become patient. And I have seen her conquer, so I can actually do even more.
Nthabiseng, where can we get these books? You've been talking about them. For those who are thinking, I must read at least one of her books, where can we find them?
The books can be found through the following contact details: +27 76 636 1948 076 636 1948 if you are in South Africa, and that is Sheila Ndikumana, who will be able to assist them on how and where they can get the books, and where in the corporates or in traditional spaces, where there is traditional authorities and where they want to invite me, they can contact Sheila Ndikumana, who is my PR manager, or if they want to book me for talks or for even mediation in families, they can find me on +27 76 636 1948 through Sheila Ndikumana. Thank you.
Nthabiseng, this has been a pleasure, a delight, and I'll say this because we didn't only walk in your footsteps for a moment, but we've learned. We have watched your resilience. We've had an opportunity to gauge your insight, to speak on matters that are most important, from presidency to how we treat ourselves, to how we speak of ourselves. I noticed something. You, when I said, what would you like to say? You said, I will see. That in and of itself is a lesson to walk away with. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. All the strength, the power, the love, and the success in your endeavors.
Thank you so much, Sheila. God bless you.
The voice of a celebrated author, a sought-after TV personality, and award-winning life and personal development coach. Of course, you can hear the caliber of light she brings, and so she stands as a beacon of transformation, and not just for women and youth. I believe for every single person that will give her an opportunity to speak to them. And so that was the voice of Nthabiseng Montsho joining us this evening. Be sure to look out for her books. If you're thinking to yourself, listen, I want to revisit this conversation, we are streaming live right now on YouTube, so you can head over to YouTube, look out for Channel Africa, and reflect on some of the points that she had made. And so if you are looking to get a hold of those books as well, Women Arise with Power, Life Skills for the Youth are two of the books that she had made mention of. And so head over to those platforms. She specifically gave us a number, and what we will do is we will post it on social media so that you don't have to stress about getting yourself a copy. It is 28 minutes before midnight in Central African time. If you have just joined us, thank you so much for choosing us over the rest. Heartlines, we have the conversations that matter most because they tug at our heartstrings. Let's get some music.